Hello and welcome to a number of episodes of Dear Rach and Soph. We don't keep track because, who needs numbers when you have words? Hi, Sophie. How are you?
Hello, Rachel. I'm very well. Always happy to see you. In fact, when we were recording this, I'm about to see you 3 days in a row because we are banking the content.
Yes, we just love chatting. I
And
have
according to
been,
you and your t-shirt, reading is
I
sexy.
know, I was hoping it would be able to be seen. So I almost wore it out this morning and then I thought, no, I'm not going to because I'm like, oh, weird. I feel like it's a t-shirt that I need to wear. So anyone who's listening, yeah, it says reading is sexy in big bold print. I feel like it's a t-shirt I need to wear in bookish environments like this.
Why? Why
I
not
don't
just
know.
claim it out in the public?
I don't
Tell
know. I
everyone.
don't know. I was feeling weird. So, maybe it's just
Look, at the risk of wading into some dangerous territory here, it's the sort of t-shirt a certain Luke Bateman may wear. Those of
oh
you who aren't aware who Luke Bateman is, please Google it. I'm not telling you.
yeah. Oh, yeah, we could go. I mean, by the time this comes out, it's probably all died down. So,
True, true, true,
that's the
true.
problem big when we're banking stuff. But how are you? It's a Saturday here. What you been up to?
It's a Saturday in Sydney as well.
Oh,
Just
really? Oh my goodness, stop. The world is just freaking me out
Actually, I'm
lately.
saying that because sometimes I feel like I'm living in a parallel dimension of
Yeah,
time.
yeah, I totally understand. What did I say to my husband the other day? Oh, no, somebody else about how I actually don't ever kind of know what day it is or anything because it doesn't make
You're just working all the time.
any
Yeah,
difference to me at all.
yeah, yeah. I understand the feeling. I have days in the office, and that helps me understand which day of the week it is. But it's a long weekend where I am, not where you are, because
Yeah.
WA doesn't have it. So long weekends can always make things a little interesting.
Hmm.
But before we started recording, we were talking about something that we thought we'd actually record, and that
Yes.
is the book that you are reading.
So, Anthony, I'm not going to say anything good or bad about this book because I'm reading it with Anthony Hodgson and Tess Woods for Reading
And it
Between
is
the Lines.
Maeve
It's
Binchy's
Maeve
evening
Binchy's
class.
evening class. It's an old book. It's like was first published in 1996, and I was saying to Sophie that it's weird. I'm trying to explain it, but there's like, let me see if this is a contents page. Her point of view, she has a point of view from each character, and it's not even completely that character. So there's like maybe six or seven different point of view characters. And for those who aren't watching, I'm using like air quotes because it's third person, and we occasionally, head hop into someone else's point of view. But like it all's loosely around like about this evening class, but they're kind of the point of view that I don't even know what she's doing. Like I can't even explain it, but I wonder if she'll get away with what she's doing now. It's quite a slow story, and there's a lot of telling, and it's sort of like six or seven parts of these different people that are loosely linked. But yeah, I don't know. I just feel like I can't remember what I was exactly saying before, but I
I
don't
think
know
we
if
were
she'll
saying
get
that
away with.
you probably wouldn't see that today. We were talking
Yes,
about the amount of rules that get imposed on writers,
yes,
and
that's
my
right.
theory is that because everyone can be online and see these rules expressed, that maybe that's the reason why things seem to be a lot more strict for writers now, because everyone can take you to task and say, "Well, don't head hop," that phrase you just.
That's true. And I remember I heard that I mean, I think we've talked about this before, but I heard that phrase head hopping at one of my early RWA conferences. And then I was always scared to jump from, one person's point of view to the next within, a paragraph or page or whatever. And then I talked to editors and you, I think, even when we first started talking, and the editors were like, "Oh, I don't even never even heard of head hopping." And I think, yeah,
Never heard of it before you raised it.
no, and Maeve Binchy writes a book where she does head hop, not as much as Nora Roberts, but her story, I don't know if she would get published today. The characters are really well written. I feel like I'm, not reading about someone's, actual real people's lives, but there's just something about it. Yeah, it's different to what we publish these days.
Yeah, and I do think we are very rule bound. There's a lot out there on the internets that will tell prospective writers and existing writers and well-published writers that you need to do this and you need to do that. And if now that I'm saying it, I'm thinking, why? Like, who made up these
I
rules? In fact,
know.
even Agatha Christie, there are no rules that apply to
And
her.
look how successful she is and how many people loved her. And
Yeah.
I'm thinking with this Maeve Binchy book, like these today, I think it would have been broken up into one chapter of one person's point of view, the next chapter, the next chapter, like how a lot of how you and I write often in our women's fiction, multiple point of views. But she doesn't do that. She all keeps it in chunks. Now I haven't finished, so I don't exactly know how, if I'm going to enjoy it, like or what. But it's just a very different way that you see being written now. Hmm.
Mm. And you see that in the Thornbirds, which I've mentioned before.
Yes,
If that manuscript came into a publisher or an agent now, they'd probably say, oh, overwritten, too much exposition.
100%. Yes,
And I do think we might have talked about this. We've done so many episodes now, Rach, I can't remember.
I
But
know.
the whole show versus tell thing, the obsession with telling all of us, you have to show, not tell. It's like that's actually a filmic thing more than
Yeah.
it is a
Oh.
writing thing. And so, but it's a note that comes up over and over again. You need to show us, not tell us.
But
And then
you know what? I've realized, I think you're right. Like I think we get that too much, but people don't actually know exactly what showing versus telling is because sometimes telling, and again I'm using this inverted commas, like sometimes telling works, but I've been judging quite a few contests and the telling in that doesn't work. And there's like it's really hard to explain why, but it's like it's all about voice, I think. If you've got
yes.
a strong voice, I don't mind being told kind of it, but if I'm just being told in an normal kind of way or someone was scared or whatever, or this, then I'm not invested. I don't feel connected to the character. So, yeah, I think it's not that all telling is bad, but if you do tell, you need to do it in a very sort of strong, unique kind of, I don't know, it's hard to explain. That's one of the problems, isn't it? Until you, and I guess as a publisher, you can't necessarily say, well, I can't explain necessarily what the difference between good telling and bad telling is, but I can see it and I can feel
Mhm.
it.
Yeah. And if we look at it in music, for example, then there's something like I might say so and so could sing the phone book and make it sound
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
And that is an actual singing voice, but it's not that different when we consider that the original storytelling was oral. The
Yeah.
author needs to have a voice, but they need to not intrude. And a lot of the head hopping and that sort of thing is the author getting in the way of the story. But there is
Yes.
a balance to be struck between exposition where you're telling, when someone might say you're telling too much, and actually interfering, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Does. As I said, it's something you can just really see when you've got like two examples. Actually, there was I shared recently in a writing group that I'm in, an example of, I think it was on Jane Friedman's website, and it wasn't her, but someone had written about the difference between showing versus telling, and it was really clear, that, you know, yeah, it's so clear because I think that's an airy fairy kind of thing, and people don't really get what it means. Yeah.
I have challenged the note when it's come in before, when I've had a note saying you need to show, not tell. I said, all right, in this scene, exactly what do you mean?
Yeah,
And
exactly. Because
often they can't tell me.
no, and I feel like sometimes I just want to be told, you know, the guy was tall. Like, I don't need
Yeah.
to see him reaching up and being a yeah.
And
Um
that's a great example, actually, of what it is. So, what you just said there is it can be that kind of detail where you say he was tall, he had brown hair, and then the note might be, well, show us, don't tell us. Like, but actually, at that point in the story, I don't need to, yes,
show
write a
you.
scene in which his head is rubbing
No,
against the ceiling and whatever it is, you know.
you don't need to know that. We just need to take that piece of information and
Yeah.
go with the story. Yeah. I mean, some of my favorite books in the last few years, I think, are heavily told. And I know you read one of them too, which you really loved. Oh, Anna Napolitano's
Hello, beautiful. Yeah.
Hello Beautiful. Like they're telling that story
Yeah.
pretty much.
American Wife, which you and I discussed
Yep.
with Anthea Hodgson on
Yep.
Reading Between Deadlines. That's a lot of telling.
Yeah. But if you can tell well,
That's
then
right. It comes
it's
back to the
more
voice.
it's
Yeah.
almost more, I feel like if you can tell well, it's almost more enjoyable than showing.
Yeah, particularly if the showing is not adept, because dialogue's really hard to do well. And
Yeah.
if you're a writer and you've had a note to show, don't tell, and you're doing it through dialogue and you don't love writing dialogue, or
Mm.
it's just not your greatest skill, then you might be showing, but
Yeah.
the
And
reader may not
sometimes
enjoy it.
if you're talking about dialogue, like I see a lot in the early manuscripts that I like judge and that, they use dialogue just to info dump stuff in. So I'd be like, Sophie, remember that time when you and I went to the zoo and we saw an elephant? Whereas I wouldn't actually be normally just raising that, like it feels
Yeah.
like it's raised at really weird, times just specifically to get into the fact, into the conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or if it's someone you know, or you'd say, "Hey, Soph, remember the elephant." That's all you
Yeah,
need to say,
yeah,
and
yeah.
then that would be it.
Yes. Yeah, good
But
point.
yeah, you're right about the info dumping.
But
So
go.
I was going to say, should we segue towards doing the bio for our guest today?
Okay, we can do that.
Unless you're about to tell me something else, in which case, by all means, go ahead.
Well, no, I wasn't. So I was just about to say, like, what else have you been up to? But you're right, like we've already talked 10 minutes, so we should probably read the bio.
Yeah. And we will be recording again very soon, so I could tell
Yes.
you more then. So I am going to now segue into telling our lures, our
Do it.
listeners slash viewers. Okay, I've got it. That's a portmanteau I didn't expect to have. Lures.
I love it.
Um, about Léonie Kelsall, who is our guest today. Raised initially in a tiny no-haul town on South Australia's Florio coast, then in the slightly more populated wheat and sheep farming land at Palomana, Léonie is a country girl through and through. Growing up without a television, she developed a love of reading before she reached primary school, swiftly followed by a desire to write. An animal rescuer and carer, she now divides her time between the lush Adelaide Hills, the location of her professional counselling practice, and the stark arid beauty of the family farm at Palomana. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, which provides both the setting for many of her stories and a refuge for the rescues that can't be released. Léonie is the best-selling author of 7 rural romance novels. Her 8th is The Path Through the Coojong Trees, out in July this year. And so we're going to talk to Léonie about that book and also about her work as a counsellor and how that may inform her development of characters.
Awesome. I can't wait to hear all about that.
Right, I shall put us on pause. Rachel, we have a wonderful guest with us whose bio we've already covered. It is Léonie Kelsall. Hello, Léonie. How are you?
Hello, hello. Very good, thank you. And you both are fine, I hope.
Oh yeah, surviving, just the weekend.
That good?
So it's just the same day as every other day because we're writers, right?
Yeah.
And Rach is flying the flag for the Reading is Sexy camp.
I am. Do you love my new t-shirt?
I
Yeah.
do love your new t-shirt. And I hope you appreciate that I'm out of tracky dacks. Actually, I'm totally
I'm not.
lying. No, I'm wearing, yeah. Okay. I've got tracky dacks on, but I've got a clean jumper on just for you.
Yeah,
And you
I
have a
love
great
blue for that reason. You don't have to see the bottom, right?
Yeah.
and you have a
that's
great
it.
banner behind you, Home, Heart, and Heroes. I love alliteration.
Yeah, so do I. Too much.
Heart and heroes. See, I'm just like, didn't even notice that as alliteration, even though I'm an English teacher and I should have noticed that immediately. Well, I
Yeah,
was an English teacher. Thank goodness I'm no longer an English teacher for the future of our country.
that's yeah, poor you. That's putting yourself down.
Exactly.
I can imagine. Were you a high school teacher?
Yeah, yep.
Yeah,
Very
I can
good.
imagine how much the kids would have absolutely loved to have you as a teacher.
Don't.
You would have formed some young minds in a good way.
Oh, well, I didn't do it for long enough to inform many.
But you're informing minds through your writing, Rach. So it's just
Yeah,
a different
maybe.
form of English teaching.
Yeah.
But
Anyway, we're not here to talk about my writing and my English teaching. We're here to talk about Léonie.
And Léonie has quite a few strings to her bow. And
Yeah.
Léonie, you not only write rural romance, but you write romance under the name Léonie K. And you also have a counselling practice. And I think I'd actually like to start with the counselling practice because I would imagine, and we'll get to it, that might inform some of your writing work. So when did you begin counselling?
Wow, too long ago to remember
Ah,
when. Years ago, because I'm not that young. It wasn't my first career. I worked for the education department for years, and I'd also worked for the history trust. And then the education department had huge cutbacks, and I decided I'd try something different. I went into counselling then, but it's probably 15 years, I guess.
Mhm.
wow.
So was that sort of an extension of the work you've done before, and you thought this was, I've been dealing with people, I can see that there's a need for this, or just an interest in human behaviour, maybe?
It wasn't so much an extension. In schools, I actually worked with some of the disadvantaged children, and I loathed doing that because there was, sorry, we're going to get animals through everything.
All right, we love animals.
I've put dogs in the car because they're in a mood because of the wind.
Oh, really? How funny.
That would be really bad.
Mine's on her bed behind me. Hang on, you can't
Yeah,
see.
don't show off. Don't show off. I just took mine for a walk to try and settle them down, and it didn't work. And now the cat's going to
Getting a
knock
walk
everything off
after.
here. Um, Yeah, I didn't like working with the kids in school because the type of children I was there to help, and to negotiate a curriculum for them. Basically, there was nothing I could do for them. I knew what sort of home life they were going to, and it wasn't a place I could help. So I didn't fall into counselling that way. It was more a total sidestep, I guess. I think a lot of us have people come to you with your problems or who want to talk, and I don't like to talk very much, which probably makes me a good listener because I'd rather just hear somebody else's story. When it looks like things have exploded here, it's because the cat's just knocked all the lights and everything off, and I can't stop him.
So for anyone who's listening, not watching, Leonie's cat actually appeared in front of the camera. And so...
How many animals do you have at the moment, Leonie?
Well, this one's a 10-kilo cat, so dangerous. There goes my phone. 4 cats, 2 dogs, 3 sheep,
Wow.
rescued ducks, chickens, and whatever else. There's always things going through, but
Wow.
no possums or anything at the moment. So I'm being reserved. Yeah. So counselling. I don't know about you, but this is when life is life. I can never get a full sentence out about anything.
Mine is the same, don't
fractured.
worry.
Yeah, fractured. So counselling was kind of a sidestep. I'd had quite a few people come to me and ask for advice that I wasn't qualified to give.
Mhm.
And I always felt very uncomfortable about, making suggestions when it's just coming from my gut feeling, not from a place of knowledge. So I thought I actually need to go and get educated in this and do my qualification and decide whether that's something I would actually like to continue with. So that's
Mhm.
how I got into counselling.
And when did the writing
Quick
start?
question.
Oh,
I was
sorry,
gonna say-
Rachel's got a question.
No, you already asked it. I was going to say, like, did the writing start before or after the counselling?
I wrote my first book when my eldest 2 kids were running around in nappies, and they're in their upper 30s now.
Wow.
So it was a very long time ago that I wrote it. Back when it was pen and paper, when you'd done your first couple of drafts with pen and paper, you'd borrow a typewriter and type it up and send it over to the UK to try and get published. So I had some near miss rejections from the UK and put it aside whilst I raised those kids and had a couple of careers. And then another child came along. I've worked out how that happens now, so it's not going to happen again. There's like 16 years between my 2 youngest and eldest.
Oh, wow.
And when I went into counselling, I had extra time because I was working for myself. And I discovered that the way of getting published had changed. You no longer had to send your physical copy of your entire manuscript over to the UK. You were shopping for an agent instead, and it was all online. So once I found that out, I went, oh, I'd like to get back into this. So I was pitching that manuscript I'd written, 15, 20 years earlier. And then I think as soon as you get involved with trying to pitch a manuscript and you're back in that literary world, if you're creative, you're just going to start writing again. It's a bit hard to squash down.
Yeah.
So did you have to type up the hard copy manuscript that you had into a Word
Yeah,
document?
good question.
Yeah.
It wasn't even a Word document because this was before, when I changed over, yes, I had to get my typed copy but I mean, it was a huge edit anyway.
Right.
By that stage, so many years later, because it had legal terms in it and laws had changed and things like that. So it was
But
would
you
be the
still
biggest
believed in the
edit.
story? Do you still believe in
I
the
still
story?
believed in it. Yeah, and I still absolutely love that story. That's out under Léonie K, my pen name. And yeah, it always was one of my favourite stories, but it's a very, very dark story. So obviously I can't put it under this name because what I write's totally different under my legal name.
So, did Léonie K come before Léonie Kelsall in terms of author output?
Did Léonie K cover for her?
Come first. Come first.
Come first. No, I was always going to publish that initial book under my own name because I loved it so much. But then I was speaking to one of my colleagues in America who's obviously far wiser than I am. And she said, no, keep your legal name until you know exactly what you want to write. Don't muddy the waters. So use a pen name. And she writes under several genres and she has a different pen name for every genre.
Wow.
I discovered that that actually means having a different website, a different Facebook
Yeah.
page, a different Twitter. Too hard. That's way too hard. So I only have the one pen name, and I stick everything that's not rural fiction. Everything gets stuck under Laney K. So my waters are very muddied over there, but I'm intrinsically lazy, so we're not having any more pen names.
You must write a lot, like, because if you're writing now 2 books a year for Alan and Unwin, are you still writing under Lenny Kay in that time as well?
I did last year, but I'm not this year because I'm getting again, there's that lazy word. I'm finding 2 books a year harder than I expected. When I said yes, I do 2 books a year easy, I had books in my back pocket at that stage. So, it's a matter of pulling them out and going, yes, I can dress this up and I can make this one into rural fiction. And, it was easy enough. And now I'm at the stage of, no, I've actually got to put bum on seat and words on a page, to the point that I've got to do 20,000 words over the next 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah, which isn't a very nice prospect, because I don't like to write in any organized fashion. Very little about my life is organized. So I can't just sit there and go, I'm going to write 1,000 words today. It's like I might sit there and do absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
By nothing, I mean stalk social media. Or I might sit and slam out 5 or 10,000 words if I'm in the mood. But I
Can
only,
you do 10,000 a day? See, I've taken my,
yeah.
you see,
My
I'm a lot
record
more
is,
solid, like, I think, in terms of, I just, plod along. I'm unorganized in a lot of ways, like similar to you said, but I think I have to get my words out a reasonable amount each day, because I know that I can never do, like, I think the most I've ever written is 4,000, and that's like, once or twice in my career. So for me,
yeah.
2,000 is like, quite good a day. And so I could never do 10,000 in a day. I just,
Right now, I'd be really, really happy to see 2,000 words a day.
yeah.
I have written 2 of my books. I wrote, and that's The Homestead in the Eucalypts, and actually the one that comes out, the new one that's out, the Path Through the Coojong. Both of those I wrote in 30 days.
Wow.
So they're
Amazing.
100,000 words, did them in 30 days. But normally it'd take me 6 months to write a book, because I will faff around until the last minute. I think I need a deadline to kind of
Yeah.
kick me in the pants.
Yeah, fair.
It sounds like you've got one. 3 weeks' time, 20,000
I
words.
know. Apparently that's not quite tight enough yet, because I'm still messing around.
Let's give it another week.
Yeah, that's what I think.
Well, because we recently chatted to Carly Lane, who does 2 books a year, and
Yeah.
discovered Carly works like 2 to 3 books ahead, which was
Yes.
like
Yeah,
eye-opening to
very
say the least.
sensible. I wish that I could get ahead again.
I tried to lead Carly astray. I had her over here to
Oh, good
stay
on
because
you.
I thought I'll lead her astray and she'll fall behind, but she didn't.
Oh, I love that thinking. Yeah.
Well, as in, like, she was writing while she was with you. Is that why she didn't fall
No,
behind?
no, no, no. We were drinking and talking, and she
Right.
still didn't fall behind. So I didn't lead her astray enough. My bad behaviours did not rub off on her enough.
So
Well, look,
annoying.
it is a super steep pace, and I've talked about this with Rachel because she has written 2 books a year, and even 2 books every 18 months, because it's steep because you're still working on one while you're talking about the other one and
Mm,
being one. And
mm.
I think that alone,
The
fact that there are
promotion
different
as well.
activities going
Yeah.
on, yeah,
Yeah,
it's a lot.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's a lot. But look, Leonie, you've managed it because you published your first novel in this style, The Farm at Pepper Tree Crossing, in 2020, and it's 2025 and
Hmm.
already up to number 8. So,
Yeah.
well, mid 2025. So you've said that at the moment, you've got 20,000 words to write in 3 weeks' time. What is your usual writing process like, or do you not have a usual writing process?
Good question.
Yeah, I like to pretend I have a process, because I turn on my laptop really early in the morning and, make all the noises like I'm going to settle down to work. Um, I find it really, really hard working from home, because there's always the animals as a
Yeah.
distraction. Our farm's 40 minutes away. So by the time I've gone there, I may as well stay for most of the day. Just your householdy things. And I tend to write a sentence and then just be so darn proud of myself that I've written a sentence that I go off and wash the dishes or something because,
Well,
wow,
what a
I've done
reward,
this
washing the
sentence.
dishes. Like,
I
wow.
know it's a high end life, I tell you. So I don't really have a process. My laptop does stay on all day so that when I think of something, I will come and write it down. I tend to write quite an eclectic way in that I love words and I'll think of a word I really like. You might hear it on the radio or something, and I'll be out walking the dog and I'll be thinking of this word and I'll come up with a sentence built around the word, and I will be convinced that this is the best sentence ever written. Like,
Mhm.
Tolstoy had nothing on me when I'm walking around the dog park. And I'll just keep repeating this sentence over and over, and I'll come home and I'll scribble it down on a piece of paper, and I should stick it up on my pin-up board, but I'm really short and I've got a big roll top desk, so I can't actually reach my pin-up board. It's lovely and clean. So I just stick it in a cubby hole on my desk somewhere where it goes to languish. And at some stage in some book, I will find that scrap of paper and I'll read the sentence and I'll go, oh, yeah, that's a fantastic sentence. And I'll use that sentence to structure a scene or a chapter around. So it had nothing to do with anything. They're just
Mhm.
words that I have loved. And I'll just write a scene or a chapter from that. Then when I come round to finally reading through the book, when I get to the end of it, I'll come up to this, God's gift to man sentence, and I'll read it and go, oh, what Tosser wrote that. It's like literally the worst thing I've read in my life, but it did help me write that, formulate that entire chapter came from just that sentence. So I'm sure it's a really whack way to write, and it's certainly a very long way from planning anything. I
Hey, if
wish I
it's
was a
working.
planner. It's so far, so far.
Yeah. So therefore, you're not a planner, because Rachel and I will often have the planner versus pantser conversation.
I wish I was. I genuinely, I wish so hard I was, that I have sat at my desk and mourned not being a planner so much that my partner went out and bought me index cards in all the colors, because I kept telling him how everybody else does their planning on index cards and puts it on
And
their
the colours
board.
are so pretty. I hear ya. I like
They're so
stationery. I
beautiful.
want the stuff. Yeah.
Well, I pulled it out. He must have given it to me 2 years ago, and I pulled it out a couple of days ago when I was cleaning my desk, which was also procrastinating, not writing. And I
I need
thought,
to do that.
I'm just going to put this on the giveaway site, because I have used 3 cards in the 2 years. I can't even find it because it's behind all the junk and the notes. I
Yeah.
thought, no, that's too much planning for me. The story's just going to go where it goes.
I've tried to. It just doesn't work for me either.
So how do
I
you,
wish I could.
sorry, you said you wish you could.
Oh, so hard,
But
so hard.
everyone's got to follow their own nature, I'm very fond of saying.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think you do in the end. Yeah.
But then for lady, when the edit comes back to you, because that's probably more of a like that's a structured process. Is like here is the
Mm.
feedback, in you go. Do you actually enjoy that process, or are you a bit like me and not looking forward to it? It's coming in.
No, I actually love the edits, but that's because until the last book, my edits have been really light. I think they've taken me 2 days to
Right.
complete. Then the last book came back, and my editor Courtney said to me, "Oh, that's great," because I decided I'd sent the book in, and I said, "Look, I'm not happy with this. It's the first book I've not been happy with because I'm not in love with the main character.
Mhm.
She's really a bit of a, can we swear? She's
Yeah.
really not a nice person. She was a bitch. I modelled her on my youngest daughter, the kid who's in my socials. And this woman's a bitch. I said, I can't find that she has a redeeming feature. I don't know what it is yet, but here's the book. And then when Courtney read it, she goes, oh, yeah, it's not as bad as you say it is, but I can see what you're getting at. And I said, oh, no, give it back to me. I'm going to rewrite it. I've got another idea of how to make her more likable. So I'd rewritten it. This is before structural edits, because I like to mess with my editor like that, obviously, by going, here's the book. No, it's not. I'll have that back again. Here it is. So I got it back for structural edits, and she put a note on it and said, oh, thanks to all your fantastic work. The structural edits are really light. So, not much to do at all. And I'm thinking, oh, that's great. They're light. They're always light by what I think, if they take me 2 days, I think they're light. Oh, that's fantastic. But then I started reading it and I'm going, nope, 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 don't like all this. I sent it back to her 2 days ago and I said, those light structural edits, they actually took me almost a week and it is the most edits I have done in my life. There's more
So funny.
red writing now in this than the original, but now I really love it. Now I love the book. I found the character. It's the first time I've not found the character by 30,000 words. Normally I write to 30,000 words
Wow.
before I really know the character and their motivations and what's driving them. And then I go back and fix those 30 to match the character motivation and just write straight through from there. This book, I just couldn't find her until that second read through.
Well, I'm sure the editor was pleased to hear that, because it's like they've given you feedback that worked.
Well, I did head up my email with don't panic, because she's seeing the structural edits going one way as I've been directed to do, and I'm going, oh look, here's a totally different book now, Courtney. You're welcome. So I think she possibly panicked a little bit about it, but she said she was cool.
Fair.
So did you say that was that book before the current one, or is it this book?
No, that's book 10. That's the one. No, book 9. Sorry, book 9, which comes out in January.
Oh, right.
How do you keep the numbers up? That's very sensible. I have people, because you'll always know when people ask you, like journalists often ask, how many books have you written? I'm always like, I don't know. So
because you've written nearly 3 times as many as me, so
I,
that's
I still didn't know at 9 that was 9. So I'm very impressed.
Well, actually, those books for this publisher are hanging on the wall to my left with each cover of the book, so I can actually quickly count it and go, oh, yes, that one we're talking about.
But how many have you written under Léonie K? So you must have written same as me or more with that.
I'll leave you to do the maths because I can't, but I think this latest book makes it 23 books in total. So that's 8.
Yeah. Wow.
8 with Alan and Unwin. So 17, maybe? Is that, no, 81, 21, does that work? No.
I don't know.
Not maths.
I just started looking off into the corner when you started talking about numbers.
Fair.
But are the Léonie K, do you indie publish the Léonie K ones, or do you have a publisher for those?
Some are indie and some are with a US publisher. Okay. So it just depends on the book. Yes, I am. I feel like a little bit of an alien. I feel like a little bit of an alien when somebody says you're a hybrid author. Yes, I am. I have antenna.
I love it. But what do you prefer? Like, do you have any options, or you think there's both, like, you enjoy both for different reasons?
They're very, very different. I like the structure of doing the rural fiction, but I will argue my point. I like the structure, but I don't like being told what to do. So I will argue any edits that come back. Because Léonie K writes such different genres, it's like a break.
Yeah.
It's a bit like having 2 personalities, because you've got erotic fiction in there and contemporary romance and alien sci-fi. There's a bit of everything going on wherever the mood takes me. So they're a lot faster and easier to write. One of them I used to write with a co-writer, which was so much fun because we'd do a chapter each and just, and we had no plan. So we'd write our chapter, send it to the co-writer. They'd have to write their character out of the problem that I've just put them in. So that was fun and fast and furious.
Yeah.
So I love doing that. My US publisher is actually a really hard editor. So I'm a little bit daunted by placing stuff with her. I think so much the publisher as my editor. She will tell me off for using expletive construction all the time. And I'm like, can you tell me what that is?
Expletive construction. Sophie,
exactly.
No, Sophie doesn't even know. She's a publisher.
Look, I literally have a note on my desk because I didn't know what it was. It's don't begin sentences with or join phrases with there is, was, were, had been, or it is, was, had been, seemed to be, all these other things, because they're passive, bland, and weak and strip the energy from the sentence. And she's like really hot on it. So I would have to go through my entire book and search, there is all the way through and make sure I've not used it.
Jeez, we were talking before you came on. We do a little, bit before, just general chat, and we started talking about rules in fiction. There's quite a few rules there.
Look, I'm going to borrow their passive, bland, and weak and strip the energy from a sentence. What feedback to give a writer?
Yeah.
Yeah, ouch.
Yeah,
Yeah,
quite.
so writing for them's not particularly easy,
Mm.
which takes the fun out of it. Yeah, the
Yeah.
self-publishing's easy because I write silly things in self-publishing as well. I had an idea. My co-writer and I were writing erotic alien shifter science fiction, which is a huge thing in America, right? Great
Yeah.
money to be made, fun to write. We'd written a series about mercenaries who could take on the characteristics of the big cats. Each mercenary was a different big cat. So they're romances. Each book deals with a different mercenary, so a different big cat. Great fun. We'd got to the end of that series, it sold really well, and my co-writer said, "Oh, so what should we do next?" And I went, "Oh yeah, whatever." And she goes, "Well, we need to write more of these because that's where the money is." And I went, "Oh no, I've got this great idea because I've done research," which I never do research. She does all of the research. She looks at actual statistics to do the research, whereas I just make shit up.
You
And I
just
said,
go
"I've
for a
got this."
vibe, hey?
Exactly. And I said to her, "I've got this great idea. I reckon chapter books are going to be the next big thing." This was like 3, 4 years ago. Chapter books are going to be the next big thing. Aliens and shifters are still a big thing. And erotic romance is always going to be a thing. So what we're going to write is flirty, dirty, shorty, erotic alien romances. And she said,
Oh,
"What?" I said, "Flirty, dirty, shorty, erotic alien rom-coms." And she said,
wow.
"No, no." So I wrote it. She carried on writing the Alien Shifters. She
Yeah.
bought a lake house with the money she made from Alien Shifters, and I made like $500.
I thought you were going to tell us, the opposite there, that she was
Yeah,
just
nah.
sitting
No,
there.
no, she was totally right. I was totally wrong, but I had fun writing it.
Yeah, and
It was
that's half the, well, I
hilarious.
think that's the most important thing.
Yeah,
Fun, right?
yeah.
Like, why are we
You
doing
haven't gone
this?
back to Alien Shifters yourself?
I'm very tempted to. If I can find the time, I
Mhm.
probably will because they are actually fun to write. And also you're creating a world. I lose a lot of time to research, like a ridiculous amount of time to research for my real books. So
Yeah.
if I write Alien Shifters, I'm making it all up. And I was going to say nobody can tell me I'm wrong, but that's not true because you actually get reviews where people tell you you're wrong.
Jeez.
So do you think there's any crossover between your real books in inverted commas and the readership for the Lady K's? Like, do you have readers who are like, yes, I'm reading everything you write?
I do have some crossover, and I always warn my readers who read my rural fiction, and they say, "Oh yes, I'm going to get your Laney Cats." I'm going, "They're different. They're really, really different." I don't know how to stress this enough, but they're incredibly different. You could not imagine how different they are, and especially when it's a lovely little old lady who comes along and she's loved my rural fictions, which mine are all closed doors. My rural fictions. I'd like them to be a little bit more cerebral. Um, there's a lot of emotion in them. And then she's going, "Oh yes, well, I'm going to read Hawaiian Taboo," and I'm like, "Okay, I don't know that you should."
The
But
door's
one woman
open.
said,
The door's open in Hawaii.
Everything is open, not just the door. And I'm like, there was one lady at a tiny, tiny little country library, and she was buying all of my books, like every single book. And I'm going, "Oh, Red, these are like, they're really, really racy, like, really, really racy." And she looks up at me and she goes, "Well, that's good. It's going to give my kids something to talk about when I die, isn't it?"
I find, yeah, we, we judge people a lot, but I think people aren't stupid, and they, if they don't want to read it, they can not, but they also read different things.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. There's books there for everybody.
Mm.
And racy books are definitely popular, and I'm now very curious
At
about
all
your
ages.
shifter books, I've got to say. But I'm going to bring it back to the latest book, which is The Path Through the Coojong Trees, and your main character, Samantha. I was interested in thinking about your counselling work because Samantha has a lot to deal with as a teenager, and when we meet her 10 years later as well, she's still got a lot going on, and you write her with great compassion. So just wondering whether the work you do as a counselor sometimes feeds into your character creation. There are things that you've seen and heard that you feel that you can channel into a character in order just to explore some of the difficulties of life, really.
Yeah, obviously I have to be very careful with what I can put in a character. I have clients who say all the time, "Are you going to write my story?" Write my story. My story is really good, and really they're not. They're generally not that interesting that you want to read them in a story. Because people come to me because they've got problems, and you don't want the whole story to be about problems and a very slow resolution. That's the thing about books. You've got this sort of compacted timeline that makes things really tricky, particularly because I write a series. So, each of my books, I don't want my characters to fall in love. I have this grand romance, fall in love, get married, whatever, within 6 months before my next book comes out in this series. So what happens is I have to write the book as though it happens over a year or two. But when I write the next 2, 3 books in this series, those events are happening at the same time as the events happen to the character in the first book. So it gets
Right.
really, really
That is super
complex.
confusing. I'm impressed that you do that because I couldn't do that, I don't think.
It's horrendous. It's absolutely horrendous. I suspect I have people giving birth before they've even had a chance to get pregnant. And so I have to keep going back and doing the math, Rachel. I've got to do the math all the
Oh,
time.
no. That's why I just
It,
keep it simple.
yeah, it is horrible, but
I was doing maths
don't
yesterday, book maths, and
congratulations.
honestly, my son came in and he's like, "What are you doing?" Like, I'm like, I've realized. So I was reading through my copy edit, and I realized that it said in one part of the book that she'd been widowed for 20 years, and then in another part of the book it said the same lady died at 93 and her husband died at 87, and they were at like the same age, kind of thing. So that didn't work out. So then I was having to try and fix that, and I was writing birth dates and. It's like I did not think we need maths in.
Well, and I'm just going to make a point here, Rachel. The copy editor didn't pick that up.
No. Yeah.
See, my editors always say to me, "Are you sure that this timeline works or this
I
math or this
know.
that?" And I'm like, I thought that was their job. I don't want to do
I've got a
that.
trick for you. Sally Hepworth told me this. Like I realized that when reading one of her books that she doesn't actually refer the timeline really at all. And so I've like I've
Yep.
just done my copy edit too, and I've been going through and they're like, the timeline is autumn here now. And I just any reference I've put in about the time now, I just delete it. And I'm like, it doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah. My
Um,
problem is with being rural, you're often referring to the seasons and things,
Yeah.
and I'm always making notes about, this happened in this season and is this
Yeah.
long enough? But then, notes forecasting for the new books don't have this person doing this in summer because that's
Mm.
winter and this book. Very confusing.
Yeah.
But in answer to your question, Sophie, which I did digress a long way from because that's me, I don't write stories from my clients, obviously, but I do use the insight that I get from them
hmm,
because obviously I get, a deeper insight into human emotions and resilience and how awkward personal growth is because it's
yeah.
not, a light bulb moment. Oh, I'm going to change who I am. And so I
Yeah.
get to naturally weave that into my storytelling. Um, and like, I'm sure we all do that because you need your characters to feel really authentic and emotionally layered. And I potentially spend a little bit too long on that emotional layering because I'm always very invested in the character. I always have to know that person very intimately as though it is somebody that I'm counseling. That's what I was saying about I get to the
Mm.
30,000 word mark. So it would be the same as counseling somebody. I would have 3 sessions with a person before I really know the truth of their story because nobody comes in and tells you the truth. They come in
Yeah.
and tell you what you want, what they want you to perceive them as. So my
Right.
characters are much the same. So I get to the 30,000, have the light bulb moment, go, I know what's going on with you. I know why you're acting like this. And then
Mm-hmm.
just go back and make sure that everything happens, that everything in my story fits. Just the
Yeah.
way they speak, the way they react to things
Hmm.
has to fit what you know of that character.
And you said you perhaps spend too much time doing that emotional layering, but no, like I don't. How much is too much? You know what I mean? To get to know them
Yeah.
in order to feel that deeply for them and present them the way they want to be presented, shall we say? I think you have to spend that time.
Always there's that problem as an author though where you want your readers to know everything that it's a little bit like when you do research about something and then you want to put every bit of that research into the
Yeah.
story where
Yeah.
really the story needed one line. It's just taking you 2 days to research
What that
exactly
line
how
is.
this lime kiln operated,
Yeah.
but not all readers need to know all that information, and it's really hard once you've
Like
found
you've worked
this.
it out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's really hard not to go, oh, look, let me share this with you.
Mm.
Yeah.
So the emotional aspect is also like that as well. You know, you want to give hints of your character, why they act in the way they do, but you don't want to spell it out, and you don't want to overburden people with it, because my themes are often quite dark as well. So,
Mm.
you know, got to get that balance in there.
Yeah, and I guess I sometimes think that reading fiction is a way to find a path through life, much as your characters are trying to find
Mm,
paths through
mm,
life. So
yeah.
it's reassuring for the reader to see that happening. If that makes
Yeah,
sense.
yeah, yeah.
Mm.
I think as stories are about human connection, both between the characters in a book, but also between the characters and our readers, us and our readers. You know, you're trying to create this triangle where you're all connected, you're all understanding, you're enjoying, you're on a journey together. And you know, given the genre that I write, it's a journey to a happy ending for at least a couple of the characters. And
Hmm.
maybe allowed
Yeah.
to kill others off on the way, though.
No, I was interested stylistically in the path through the Coojong trees that you have. So when we have Samantha in her younger self, we have first person point of view, and then when she's older, we have third person point of view. So I was quite interested in that. That is a stylistic difference. Is that just how the narratives came to you?
It's because originally I wrote the entire book as a YA, so it was in first
Wow.
person, and it was a very different book because it was YA. It was geared for a different audience. And then I thought, no, this is actually going to work better from her perspective as an adult, interspersed with her chapters as a 19. I think she's
Oh.
19 in the book. So there'd be a chapter or so of her as a 19-year-old. And then
Yeah.
you get her character growth instead of growing throughout the book. You see from chapter to chapter how she's changed, how she's grown, how she's evolved and dealt with the challenges that life sent her, instead of just being, you know, a linear progression.
Yeah.
I like to find a different way. Every one of my books is told a slightly different way, a slightly different style, just to get readers on their toes.
And keep yourself in the toes?
That's it. No, because I'm not organized enough to write the same way all the time. It's just
Yeah.
wherever my mind goes.
So when did you write that YA novel?
I wrote the first version of that probably about 2019.
Oh, okay.
and then that was with, I had an agent in New York, and she was very keen to get that placed, but then I decided I would pull it back and just put it on ice for a little while.
Hmm.
And there was some, I wanted more information, I wanted more feedback from other people. It does deal with some minority groups, and is very issue driven. There's a lot of my personal stuff in there as well. So I wanted to make sure I was really well informed and go a whole lot deeper in my own understanding before
Yeah.
I put the character in the book out there.
Wow.
Yeah, right. Because it is, yeah, she's a really strong character, and by that I mean because she's strong in the story, but she comes through so strongly, and that voice is really true to a teenager, I think.
Mm, mm. Yeah, I really like writing YA. I think maybe there comes a point when, as a more mature woman, maybe you shouldn't write YA,
Big.
though. So I
Yeah.
didn't want the whole book to be YA. I felt like that was kind of, you know, crossing a bit of a boundary there, where my eldest is only 21. So, you know, I had the information about what words fit, and I could very vaguely remember the emotions of being that age, enough to do justice to that character interspersed with her adult version. But I think as a whole YA book, too much angst now for me to
Right.
portray it accurately.
So
Yeah.
did you write that quite a few years ago then? Not when you're a young adult, but like, because I'm just thinking,
I was a lot younger, like 7 years ago. That's all it
but have
was.
you got other stories that you might sort of revive and recreate in a different way, or?
I think I've only got one story tucked under the bed now, and that's going to stay tucked under the bed.
Ah,
So, yeah, no, no. Now I've got to make my deadline all by myself.
Yeah.
So I'm interested then when you were thinking this is going to be book number 8, had you already thought I want to do something with this YA novel, or were you thinking about what you do for book number 8 and then say, oh, I remember I have this?
No, I had actually told my publisher about both that and Homestead and the Eucalypts, which was book 6. And that's again a dual timeline narrative. One's 1880 and one's sort of current day. I had both of those books written, and I'd said to my publisher from the outset, I want to put these through as rural fictions. I love these stories. They're two of my favorite stories, and I want them. And she was like, well, we've got to wait and see. So it wasn't until I had enough of a readership and I had proved myself writing the more traditional versions of the
Yeah.
rural fictions that they were willing to take a risk on these,
Yeah,
quite
that makes
different
sense.
kind
Yeah.
of novels.
Yeah.
So it was just a waiting game.
Yeah.
So the novel that has a deadline that's closing in, is that number 9 or number 10?
Right. The one that's, oh God, the one that's closing is number 10. Number
Right.
10. See, I don't know the numbers at all.
Oh, well, you were doing a good job pretending you did earlier.
Yeah, thanks.
And now in between writing, you also like to bake, I read. So do you use a cookbook, or are you one of those bakers who does it all from memory and handing down recipes?
I have this thing where all of my books tend to have food in them because, that's one of the hallmarks of the genre for rural fiction, not so much the aliens. Don't think they eat at all. Um, So everything that I put in there, I have to have cooked because I like it to be, a little bit of a twist. For example, in the the Willow Tree Wharf, it features an Italian chef, and he decides, food is the language of love. He's going to make some pasta for the woman he loves. And I was
You're
out in
making
my
me
garden
hungry
because,
talking about this.
sorry, I was out in my garden because that's the other thing I like to do. And I had little forget-me-nots growing everywhere. They're these tiny, tiny little blue flowers, and they turn into this sticky seed, which, if you've got a long-haired dog like I have, is just mats their coat. So I'm ripping out all these forget-me-nots. And I'm thinking, oh, the flowers are so pretty. I wonder if they're edible. So I ate some because I have this
Just to
terrible
try.
habit of, yeah, I nearly killed myself with taro plant a while back, but yeah, I have
Oh,
a
no.
tendency to just try things. So I ate the forget-me-nots and I thought, oh, they're nice. They taste like cucumber. So then I looked up to see if they're edible. A normal person would do that in the other order, but yeah, they are edible. You can use them as a garnish. So then I'm going, well, Pierce is going to make this pasta for the woman he loves. How about if I laminated, or Pierce laminated, these beautiful blue forget-me-nots into the pasta sheets so that you can
Oh,
see blue flowers all through the pasta sheets. So then I had to do it because I have to try every recipe. I did it. I fed my family. Nobody died. It went into the book. So yeah, I bake things that I'm pretty much making up. But then, like, I do sourdough every second day. I bake sourdough, things like that, so you know
oh,
them off
yum.
by heart because you're always doing them. But I'll have a go at anything.
So therefore you have a mother in the fridge for the sourdough.
No, it lives on my kitchen side because it is arctically cold in my house.
Wow.
So the mother lives on the side, but the leftover that you take off every day, that lives in my fridge, and that's usually what I cook from because I prefer the discard.
Yeah, right.
So,
It sounds like you have a very full and fulsome creative life. So have you always been like this? Like from childhood, were you always making things and curious about things?
Um, I grew up on a farm, and we didn't have a TV, or at least my mother told us we didn't have a TV. She totally lied. I found out
where
years
was the
later.
TV hiding?
So, well, I said to her only a few years back, I was being nice to her and she didn't deserve it. And I was being nice and I said, oh, I really respect you as a mother because, you didn't throw us in front of the TV. She didn't do anything with us. She just used to tell us to get outside and go and amuse ourselves, to be frank. But, she didn't use the TV as a babysitter. And she goes, oh, what are you on about? And I said, I'm trying to tell you that I appreciate your parenting style in that you didn't have us babysat by a TV. You didn't let us have a TV. Alex, my brother, and I used to love it when we got sick with chickenpox or whatever, childhood illness. because they would rent, as they told us, this tiny little TV, and we'd get to lie there and watch it and do paint with water books. And she goes, "Oh, don't be ridiculous. We always had a television." I went, "Oh, Mum. Oh, Mum." You know, I'm feeling all sorry for her. "You're losing it a bit, Mum. We didn't have a television." And she goes, "We did. It lived in our wardrobe and we'd get it out when you'd gone to bed." So yeah, so I actually grew up without television, which is great for stimulating creativity. I'd learned to read by the time I was 3. Um, Read through all of my books. Grew up with Enid Blyton, as I'm sure so many of us did. I just desperately wanted to be Enid Blyton. Read through all those, and then I, graduated onto my mother's books when I definitely shouldn't have graduated onto my mother's books. And then we moved to a town which we were still out on the farm, but the nearby town had a public library. And I didn't actually realize, I was 9 and I hadn't realized that public libraries were a thing. I thought the library was, father's study where he has his library, because that's what Enid told me. And I discovered that there was this place, an actual library full of books, and Peggy, the librarian, would let me have as many books as I wanted. And I was just in seventh heaven, and I read a book a day at that stage. So, and then I think if you're reading, there's kind of, I don't know how you can not be creative if you're reading, because I find that the world is still in my mind. So, I'm going to sleep and still thinking about that world and writing the next part of that story in my mind. So I guess I'd always done that. I wrote my first book when I was in grade 3. It was called 1, 2, 3, To the Moon We Go. And it was chosen to be published in our class. So, I'm ever so proud of that.
As
Got
you
a
should
packet
be.
of texters as a prize.
Wow, amazing.
So yeah, I'd always enjoyed writing. I said that like it's past tense. I was the very non-athletic person. It's not past tense at all. So, words were my go-to. But other than that, it was just, tootling around on the farm. So horseback riding, motorbike riding, riding my parents' nerves. It's outdoor activities, just hanging out. But all that has a fictional element to it, because my brother and I would be walking across 800 acres carrying spears that we've made from the bamboo patch, and we'd have this story going, just normal kids' imagination thing, but we probably did it for longer than kids who have got TVs or have got sports in town and friends in town. We couldn't see our friends because we were 20 kilometers out of the town, and you didn't just hop in a car.
Yeah. And it is so interesting how childhoods do form us and our habits. Like, I was restricted to half an hour of television a day. There was a television in my bedroom when I was very small, because it was like the old TV from mum and dad.
Yeah.
But I was only allowed to turn it on for half an hour a day. And so I think I learnt interesting habits that way, and that for me, television is not something you just sit in front of all day.
Yeah, same. And my kids,
See,
poor kids, were like your kids. Although I did say that we had a TV, but I only let them watch like a tiny bit at a time, and it has worked. Although now I remember, like, with the last one, you kind of start giving up. I remember a couple of years ago, my middle one said to me, "You would never have let me sit on the computer all weekend." It's like,
Yeah.
well, I'm tired now.
That's it. Yeah, I get that all the time, the comparison between the kids,
Yeah.
because 21 to 36 is
Yeah.
a lot of, well, we never got new clothes, and we didn't have brand name things.
Like, get over it.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, you survived.
Yeah.
So, Leonie, your next book, I'm guessing, based on the pattern of publication for the past little while, it will be out in January. Is that right? January, and then another one in July next year.
Yeah. Yes, that's correct.
Well, that is quite a steep pace, and I'm quite mindful of the 20,000 words you have to write. So I think we should probably let you go.
Thank you for the chat, though. It was great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for interrupting my work. I wasn't doing any.
Well, thanks for interrupting my house cleaning.
And we will put you on pause and say goodbye. Thanks, Leonie. Bye.
Bye. Well, wasn't that such a fun chat with Leonie?
It really was. Yeah, she's great.
She came to the very first book club retreat that I ran with Anthea Hodson from Rachel John's online book club, and that's why I asked how many animals she has, because she just astounds me. Like, she seems so cruisy. She's like, oh, I'm lazy and I'm not getting stuff done. But then she's writing 2 books a year. She has
Yeah.
100 animals. She still,
Yeah.
like, when we were there, she had this magpie that had like lived with her because it was, I can't remember. I should have asked her on Fake to Explain, but like, it was injured and she raised it, from a young, um what's a baby bird called? Is it just a baby chick?
Tick. Yeah.
um and then she like, it was trying to, get it to go away, but it just
Mm.
kept coming back. So she had this like bird in the house and we're all holding it. It was great. But yeah,
Oh,
like, she does farming, she does the cooking, all that clean. Like, I'm just like, I used to love baking, although the problem with baking is I eat it, you know.
good. The
Um
problem for me with baking is that I don't eat it, actually. Like, I like to bake it because I like the satisfaction of making it. And I'm like, well, now what do I do with it?
well, I will eat it when it's fresh, and I really just, at the moment, just can't afford to, because I had author photos this week, Sophie, and I'm just trying to lose this double chin. That would be good.
I also would like you to not be so hard on yourself, please, because
Uh,
everyone looks different. Everyone's got a different shape of face. Everyone has different hair. Everyone has different everything. So,
that's true.
you know,
Dog, you can wait for a moment. Obviously, someone's come into my house, so the dog decides it wants to go out.
well, we should probably say goodbye to Addie anyway, and I'll say goodbye to you, Rach, because I'm in real life time. I'm speaking to you again very soon, so
Yes.
we can
All
clock off.
right. Can't wait.
And
So everyone, thank you for listening.
viewers, as in listeners slash viewers,
Viewers,
we'll see you next time. Bye.
bye.